Yes. Pardon me, what happened? She forgot? Please call her. Yeah. Oh. Huh?
On her way.
Oh, good. Om Sahanavavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Number 8. संयुक्तमेतच्छरमक्षरं च
संयुक्तमेतक्षरमक्षरं च
व्यक्ताव्यक्तं भरते विश्वमीशः
व्यक्ताव्यक्तं भरते विश्वमीशः
अनीशश्चात्मा बध्यते भोक्तृभावात्
अनीशश्चात्मा बध्यते भोक्तृभावात्
ज्ञात्वा देवं मुच्यते सर्वपाशैः
ज्ञात्वा देवं मुच्यते सर्वपाशैः.
So, last time we saw how knowing Ishvara is the same thing as being Ishvara, correct? Yeah. Knowing Ishvara is being Ishvara. So this is something, knowing there is no other way to know Ishvara except as oneself. How are you going to know Ishvara? And even if you know, how is it going to help you? Okay? Yes, there is Ishvara. There is a guy in the sky called Ishvara, right? Not pie in the sky, guy in the sky. So the guy in the sky happens to be, whose name is what? Ishvara, God. Okay, then the next question will be what? So what? He is in charge of you. Oh. So what do I do? Well, you have to be good. Oh, why? What happens if I am bad? If you are bad, some bad things will happen to you. He is watching. He will say, come to me, I'll fix it. There is something called the day of the judgment and some terrible things will happen. This is not going to, help you in this life. Okay, then what will happen? Okay, this is if I'm bad. If I'm good, what will happen? Then you will be with God all the time in heaven, enjoying some beatitude. Beatitude, is that how you say it? Yeah. Yeah, beatitude. What is this beatitude? And how do I know? Eternally you will be happy. Here, let me tell you, if you take this mind, this kind of a mind to a place called heaven, even if it's the nicest place in the whole universe, with this kind of a mind, one can never be happy. Wherever you go, there you are, correct? Even if there was such a place, that there is some kind of an afterlife, where you go, you're going to be thrilled. It's not going to work out. It's not going to work out at all. Because if one carries the discontentment within, the discontentment is not centered on the place or on the time, it is centered on the sense of self. If the sense of self has a hook to the discontent, atripti, then that means what? Tripti, which is my own nature, really is never discovered, because because of the discontent, one becomes a loka desirer. Last week we talked about the three kinds of desires, right? What are they? Desire for progeny, desire for wealth, which is security. Progeny is also security, and then loka is also security. And finally, the desire for loka, various fields of experiences to enjoy and to feel secure, because I don't feel secure here, I have to go and feel secure there. This kind of Ishvara, to know, it is of no use, because Ishvara will still be the big guy. Okay, you go to heaven. Heaven is a big place. First you have to find out where is this God. Then you can just imagine all kinds of possibilities. Then of course everybody will be there. God will be the most popular chap in heaven. So everybody will have gone to see God. And then you are there at the end of the queue, small, already feeling small, and you are there at the end of the queue, and then because of your karma, there is a basketball player standing in front of you. So you have to play dodgeball to see Ishvara, to have a glimpse. This is what will happen. And even if your karma is good and you go and you get the front seat, let's say, somebody gives you tickets. When Dalai Lama was here in town, and somebody, was telling me, I never thought I could get tickets, but I got tickets. So just like you go see Dalai Lama, he's a Mahatma, it's wonderful to be in front of Dalai Lama and listen for 1 hour, it's wonderful. So like this, you go see Bhagavan, somebody gives you ticket because of good karma, and you got front seat, correct? Then are you happy? No, because being human nature, you will see who all other people got tickets to heaven. Wahi dekhega. That is what this person will see. इधर कौन है, उधर कौन है, यहाँ कौन आया, पीछे कौन है, आगे कौन है, who is in front, who is in back, who is to my side. And then to your shock, the gunda, the roadside gunda means the dacoit who was terrorizing your neighborhood. Yeah, the hood that was terrorizing your neighborhood is sitting right next to you. And you are seething because you were a vegetarian whole life for what? You were so... you were so good for what? You curbed your desires and managed your anger for what? And this idiot who was all but a cannibal is sitting right here enjoying God right in the dress circle seat. Naturally you will be discontent, And then of course you register the complaint. You have to go to the king of heaven. Who is that? Indra. You go to Indra and say, this is not fair. This gunda you have put right next to me. In me and my family, we were quaking all the time on earth, and here I have to coexist with him in heaven. First of all, how did he get here? And Indra says, well, whoever brings people to God, get a place in heaven. What do you mean? He brought people to God? You're crazy. I brought people to God because I was always devout, and I would, share my stories of Krishna and Rama and Jesus and what have you, and I brought people within themselves, to introspect on life. I used to tell stories from the Mahabharata, from the Bible all the time, and I geared people together. Indra is not impressed. Indra says the kinds of people who came to listen to you were already half asleep. In fact, they came to your house because it was summer and you had AC and they did it. So they came to enjoy, so they could sleep without being disturbed. What are you saying? You converted these people and helped them to, attain God. You did not. Oh, but then how did this idiot, help to bring people closer to God? Well, don't ask about that. Because as soon as people saw him on the road, everybody said, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Oh my God, where are you? Help me, save me, bachao. So, you see, with this kind of a mind, which is has the pasha. Pasha means what? Last week we saw bondage, pashu, beast, pasha, bondage. This pasha of avidya. Avidya is the pasha. Pasha means the binds, which has the bondage of avidya. And because of avidya, the emotions are going haywire and all kinds of subjective feelings and thoughts are there. And these subjective feelings and thoughts, what do? They make me have a complex centered on the I. A very complex set of complexes I have, starting with discouragement, discontent, hopelessness, fear, some sorrow, everything, everything all at once. And therefore what? That has to be interrogated. And if that is interrogated, then the distance between you and the so-called heaven is what? Zero. It's like the distance between my hand and space. Is my hand closer to space here or here? That's exactly the whole thing. If you are at home with yourself, you are at home wherever you are. And that is the whole crux of this Upanishad. The Upanishad's point is just to see that you can be at home with yourself if you know. Jnatva muchyate. Jnatva means knowing the person is free in verse number 8. And na jnatva, ajnatva, not knowing what happens, badhyate. So the verses 8 and 9 are full of contrasts, very beautiful contrasts. So badhyate muchyate is bound, is free. And the conditions for the bondage are given. What is the condition of bondage? I think I am separate. I think I am a karta, a doer. And I think I am a bhokta, an experiencer of others' doings. And therefore, the whole understanding here is that the karta is non-separate from Atma. Karta is Atma. Atma is not karta. It's like the actor who plays the role of a hero in one film and the role of some other, maybe a villain in the next film. Is the actor a hero? No. Is the actor a villain? Certainly not. Maybe he's a wonderful person, he's not a villain at all. So the hero is non-separate from the actor, correct? Yeah. The body of the hero is the body of the actor. The mind of the hero is the mind of the actor. In fact, the hero has no presence without the actor, correct? Hero is the actor. Actor, is not the hero. Villain is the actor. Actor is not the villain. This is how one has to understand. So this jiva is like that. In one life, certain roles. First role, son, daughter. Cannot avoid, correct? You cannot say, I wish I was born, but not as a son or daughter. Nowadays we have to have third category, transgender. Okay, that also gone. Okay. So I wish I was born, but I was neither a son nor a daughter nor in between. Then how is it possible? So son, daughter role. Then if you have siblings, brother, sister role. Then if you get married, husband, wife, spouse role. Then if you have children, again you become mother, father, another role, correct? So these series of roles you keep fulfilling throughout the life. And we have to understand that the problems of the life belong to the role, not to the performer. Who is the jiva? The performer of the roles. Instead, if the problems of the role roll on to the person, this is called samsara. This is samsara. When the problems of the role are not confined to the role, but they roll into the person, there is a seepage of the problems onto the person, so to speak. That is why the ajnanam needs to be totally removed. And so therefore, here there is a very powerful Mahavakya equating the jiva with who? Ishvara. Who else, But then that the one to whom the jiva is being equated, that has to be intimately understood, right? Yeah. So how to understand Ishvara? We have already seen before, long ago we saw, I'm just going to summarize it. One is to understand as the cause of the universe. Cause of the universe means nothing that I see, starting with the flower, starting with anything in this universe, is not separate from Ishvara. Everything that has presence has the presence of Ishvara. In fact, it has presence because it has Ishvara. So nothing, including my body, mind, sense complex, is devoid of Ishvara. So everything is Ishvara, so I have a sacred orientation to the whole world, to the whole universe. I have a sacred orientation, not a secular orientation. Secular orientation means what? I'm separate from everything. Yeah. A sacred orientation is everything here is sacred because there is only one presence, and that is the presence of Ishvara. And the second thing is to see that this is that is one thing. Second thing is to see Ishvara as the cause of as the manifestation of the orders in the universe. So many orders, like even this flower, this has got some kind of a biological order. Why so many petals? Why this particular shape? And why this flower is big and this is small? And why this is a particular color and that's a different color? And why it is like this and why it is not like this? Why this has fragrance, this doesn't have fragrance? So all this is part of the whole, the manifestation. And why some flowers grow singly and others grow in bunches? Why? Because this is the manifestation of an order, an endless order called the zoological order, the biological order, the botanical order, that there is an order behind it. And then when we come closer to ourselves, the indweller of this body, mind, sense complex, we come close to saying that there is another order. What is that order? Order of karma. First dharma. That is a very important order. Dharma is a very important order. And what is this dharma? The manifestation, the manifest universal matrix of norms. This is dharma. The manifest matrix of norms, this is dharma. And this dharma alone is a manifestation of God, Ishvara, not a mandate. Yeah. Any commandment, any tablet received, anything, is just reiterating what the heart already knows. If it is a manifest order, that means it is available here. And it is available here. Even if a 2-year-old is doing something wrong, that child will have, will look very cute, but will look guilty. Yeah. Don't eat another cookie. Okay. And the mother goes out, It's caught with a hand in the jar. And it will try to make up a story. Even Krishna made a story, Krishna was caught with, butter on his face and leaving little buttermilk footprints all over the house. Baby Krishna. And in fact, when his mother tried to catch him, he slipped because his whole body was full of butter. Because he had tried to climb into a big pot and had fallen in the pot, trying to steal the butter. Then he extricated himself and came home. And finally, Yashoda, mother, catches him and says, "What have you done? And you're making a nuisance of yourself. You're giving me a bad name in the whole neighborhood. Everybody says you cannot control your child. And you're going around doing this. Why are you stealing so much butter?" And he has a story to tell. He goes into a long story. You know what he says? He says, "Mom, you won't believe this. But this neighborhood is full of bullies. And these are all children who are bigger and stronger than me. In fact, they are the ones who harass the milkmaids and eat the butter." "Oh yeah? Then how come you are leaving buttery footprints here?" "No, they framed me. Since I'm so small and so cute, they caught hold of me and, smeared my face and my hands and my feet with butter so that I would become the scapegoat." Even Bhagavan, when he was caught, had to tell a story. The same Bhagavan that came to protect the dharma. So that itself shows dharma is a manifestation of Bhagavan within the heart, and it is the closest way to connect to Ishvara. This is wonderful. If I am in the cosmic law of dharma, that means I'm always close to Bhagavan. I'm never away from Bhagavan. This we have to understand. Because otherwise that alienation is there. Especially in the West, there is so much alienation. One feels far away from everything. One feels I'm missing this, I'm missing that. I'm missing, sometimes people say, oh, in India, it is so nice to be in India because you're waking up with the sound of the bells and the incense and the chants and everything, and then the prayers are chanted, and that's what I need to reconnect with my, with my home. Home means within the heart. This is what I require, this is what I want. People say this to me all the time. And then that is who? People living here, And then you go to India, they say, I just wish I was in this America, because there you can just go to the temple, nobody pushes, nobody rushes, and then you can stand there, and then when you're meditating, so people, the neighbors are not ringing the bell, and you have so much time. The grass is always green on the other continent, right? Yeah. But really speaking, where is that quietude? Where is that place of comfort? Where is that place of alignment? This is what it is. That place of alignment is whenever I am aligned with dharma, I am aligned with Ishvara. I am one with Ishvara. Astrologically they say there is an alignment of the certain planets coming in line. And this is how it is, like things kind of click in place, and the alienation is disbanded, banished. This is very, and once it is banished, it is vanished, it vanishes from the heart. And so like this, the closer one is to dharma, the closer, in the beginning one follows dharma with lot of murmurs. You mumble, you grumble, you fumble, but you follow dharma somehow, because it is the thing to do. But when that becomes your second nature, that means you are always with Ishvara. This is a very good way to relate to Ishvara and to understand that relationship, because without relating and understanding Ishvara, there is no Vedanta. In fact, people say this all the time. I joined these classes. You have to listen to this one. This is really a lot of fun. People say this to me. I joined these classes because I thought we were all going to talk about oneness. We were going to talk about oneness. And because of I wanted that oneness and I wanted to learn about that oneness, I joined these classes. And I thought, this is all cognitive. You yourself said this is a cognitive pursuit. Jnatva muchyate. Once you know, you are free. So I want to be free. I understand I am in samsara, and I joined these classes to be free. And I was all right, and suddenly you introduced Ishvara. And suddenly, because Ishvara is all about religion. And as soon as you say God, I have hives. Sometimes people have hives when you say God. Sometimes people have hives when you say Guru. Yeah, another hand starts to itch. Yeah, this is the Jiva's problem. Yeah, this is the problem where there is a transference. In fact, we have to reverse the biblical statement to express this transference. It's not that God made man in His image. Man is making man and women. Men and women make God in their own image. Of what is that image? Authority. Because the problem with authority is a problem with Ishvara. This is really all that is there. So how are you going to understand that oneness without equating yourself to the cause of the universe? How are you going to see that the cause of the universe is non-separate from you without bridging the gap between yourself as a because and the cause? Because you consider yourself an effect. This is the whole problem. This is the birth of the smallness. This is the birth of the alienation. You consider yourself as a separate effect somehow coming out of the cause. The cause is not locally available, so therefore I want to really forget about the cause. Yet I am being impacted by the cause all the time, in the form of karma, in the form of so many things. That's why the neighbor is getting the promotion. And that's why somebody else is, having nice things in their life. Why? Because I'm being impacted by the law of karma, you see. So therefore I have to sort of penetrate these laws. I have to see these laws as non-separate from the maker of these laws. The maker is not separate from the laws and is dispensing some goodwill to some chosen few. That does not how it works. So I have to I have to work within the laws to call the bluff of these laws. Like if we take the law of karma, for example, who is being impacted by the karma? The one who thinks I am karta, that is the one. The doer is being impacted by the law of karma, correct? And what does the law of karma say? That one is born in ignorance. Let's go over the premises of the law of karma. One is born in ignorance, correct? Second, because of the ignorance and the desires and all the past, one is carrying a lot of karma from the past. What are those kinds of karmas one is carrying? Prarabdha is the expression that one has of this particular life. So sanchita karma, the collected karma of all lifetimes, endless number of lifetimes one is carrying, which has the potential for every form, from amoeba to all these, horrible looking creatures, everything, It has the potential. So this is sanchita karma. Prarabdha karma is a small expression of that, to be endured or to be expressed in this life. And then agami karma. What is agami karma? What I am going to do in this life. That is also there, correct? This agami karma is also as a potential there. So these are all the karmas that are, so this is the second law, point in the law of karma. So these are all these karmas that are there. And then what? Because of the previous life papa. What is papa?
Wrongdoing.
The effects of uncomfortable situations from going against dharma. That is what is papa. Uncomfortable situations generated as a result of going against the law of dharma. That is, every law, breaking the law has consequences. So dharma and karma are interrelated, because the going against dharma expresses itself in the individual's life in the form of karma. Karma here not as action but the result of action. So the results of wrongdoing, or when you go against dharma, that is what happens. So that is where all the things that happen to the body, mind, sense complex has to do with what? The law of karma, correct? So every day one is being impacted by law of karma. Every day. Wake up in the morning is okay, and you feel really good in the morning, and then you say, yay, and then suddenly there's a catch here. What is that? Karma. That is karma. That is what has stirred this whole thing up. So here one wants to be the whole, one wants that oneness, but without going through this understanding of where I am in this karmic chain and who is this I. As long as I identify as the doer, then that distance will be there. I have to relatively bridge the distance before I know that absolutely there is no distance. This is what I have to do. I have to relatively go through the motions of bridging the distance between the quote-unquote because and the cause, in order to understand and in order to blow apart the myth that really there is no distance. Like I said, there is no distance between my hand and space. No matter where I move my hand, it is as close to space. Why? Because we are not talking of two entities. We are talking of how many entities? One. Who is that? You. So really speaking, there is that distance has to be bridged by who? The one who feels the distance. Who is the one who feels the distance? The one who says, oh, I am under a spell of karma. Why? Look at my horoscope. What is in your horoscope? Saturn is raging. 7.5 years. Yeah, 7.5 years. And the Saturn, there is nothing like Saturn to give you a spiritual push. Shani. Yes. Shani Bhagavan in the form of Shani. Shani means Shanaish charati means the one who moves very, very slowly. Think of Mercury, hardly 20 days in one house, And Jupiter, little longer, 1 year. Rahu, Ketu, 1 year. Venus, shorter than that, 2-3 months. Of Mars and Venus, 1 or 2 months in each house. What about Saturn? 2.5 years in each house. Doesn't go. And we have a legend that Saturn, has only one leg. He's Langda. So, he's a Langda. He goes, he just hops. That's why he's slow moving. We have it. And there is some story also. Some Bhagavan cut off one of his legs or something like that. In some fight they had. So this is the whole thing. It's a legend. Don't take it seriously. So just to explain why he is slow moving. So then, in the Saturn is a benefactor only when he is in the 3rd, the 6th, and the 11th house. He makes you feel like you are the best, east or west. He showers you with wealth and honors, puts you on a throne, puts you on the pedestal. There is no Saturn, it's just your own law of karma. It's expressed astronomically and astrologically. This is very interesting. So, I'm writing an article about this, There's so much, about the macro time and the micro time in terms of this horoscope. So that is something that will be fun. So that's why I'm just taking some time to talk about this as well, because that's already in my mind. So then here, we have this micro horoscope, correct? Which is just an expression of the macro law of karma. And so the individual horoscope superimposed upon the law of karma, what does it state? It states that because of, let's say from the standpoint of the one who knows, because you had wronged somebody in some other life, 1200 lifetimes ago, now you are having this particular situation. So this is actually very interesting, because who do you blame, You can't blame yourself because you don't even remember what you did, correct? You don't even know which lifetime, how it was, what happened, why did I do that, no regret possible, because Mother is very kind. Which Mother? Mother Maya has put a curtain of avarana between each life. She has put a veil. You cannot go back, correct? So then what do? You can of course blame your own local mother and father are always available to blame. You can say, it's my parents' fault that I turned out this way. You can say that, And but that's not very helpful. Why? Because they're not going to change. Just because you said that, imagine telling your mother and father, you really messed up my life. And because of you, look what I have become, What will the mother do? What will the father do? They will just say, well, you are an adult now, too bad. Whatever happened, happened. That's what the mother is going to say. Whatever happened, it then happened, And in fact, if it's an Indian mother or father, they will say, look how strong I have made you to talk back to me like this. So you have the freedom to talk back to me like this, so you didn't turn out badly, look at yourself. So go deal with it. Now you are over 21, go deal with it, Then you go to the therapist. Therapist will also say, if I was in your situation, I would not even get out of bed. Yeah, you are so much more functional. Yeah, because you pay the therapist to validate you. That is what is happening here. Yeah, because of the validation of friends you cannot believe. So you have to go to a stranger, you have to pay the therapist to validate you. And your validation of the therapist is as good as his or her validation of you. That's all it is. And then what? The therapist also says, considering your background, this is what you can expect. Yeah. It is not a solution. The therapist is not doing anything wrong. The therapist is also seeing a pattern. What is that? The therapist is in touch with the psychological order of Ishvara. That's all it is. It's beautiful, it's wonderful, but it doesn't help you get anywhere unless you know that psychological order as what? As something to surrender to. So this karma has to be a place of surrender, really. Karma brings you to a place of surrender. It has to, because nothing works. Nothing works. And people try everything. You know, people try everything from A to Z. They will keep trying all kinds of, all kind of, what's the things, self-esteem workshop, and then some kind of healing workshop, pranic healing, and then this healing and that healing and this feeling and this, all kinds of things. Everything helps for a little bit, little while, until one helps oneself by seeing that there is no way out of this. This is not in my control. This is not in my control. Even pranic healing and yoga and everything will help the person who knows how to surrender. And if you read the Yoga Sutras, it is so beautiful. In the very beginning, what is this yoga? It is talked about. And the very beginning it says Ishvara Pranidhanam. Surrender to Bhagavan. Without that there is no yoga. Yoga means this joining together of this understanding. There should be some kind of a union with Him. So this oneness without Ishvara is no oneness at all, because you are that Ishvara. So get over the allergy immediately. Take an antihistamine, spiritual antihistamine. Really. Overcome the allergy by knowing that it's an authority issue. Any fears of connecting with Ishvara has to do with father issue, mother issue. That's all it is. So, instead of understanding Bhagavan as God, as the father and the mother, all I can see is God Father. This is the problem. This is the problem. This is really the problem. So this authority issue is an issue that has to be overcome. And here that is how it says Bhoktru Bhavat. When I consider myself, as in verse 8 is talking about, when I consider myself a victim of my circumstances, without understanding that those circumstances are nothing but an expression of a law, of which I am the co-creator, really. Yeah. This is what it is. When I understand that all pain, all sorrow, all pasha, all bondage, everything goes away. And that is what has to be understood without a shadow of a doubt. And that is where the problem comes, is that this resistance to seeing, to surrendering to Bhagavan, because you will get all kinds of questions. Vedanta says you are Ishvara, right? Right. So why should I pray to Ishvara? Well, if you knew that you are Ishvara, then you don't need to pray. Because you are already prayerful. Prayer is not an act separate for you. Whatever you do is prayerfully done. Prayerfully you wake up. Everything, your whole being is an act of prayer. For the ones who know. For the ones who are in the process of knowing, you better have a relationship with Ishvara, so that this is one way of eradicating the differences that are as though there. So, but how to eradicate the as though differences? As though surrender. Yeah, as though surrender. That's what it is. Surrender means what? I know that, when I stop blaming others, there is part A of surrender. Like Medicare, surrender has part A and part B. So, part A of surrender is when I stop blaming other people for whatever is happening in my life. When I stop blaming the neighbors, when I stop blaming the parents, the siblings, the spouse, the children, the house, the place, everything, And then part B is when I stop blaming myself. Part A is easier than part B, no? Because there's a secret self-blame. Why did I do this? Why didn't I do that? How did I not know this better? So there is no guilt and there is no projection onto other people. This is the ABC of spirituality. And when do I stop blaming? Not because I repress myself from blaming. It is when do I stop blaming? When I understand that this is all Ishvara. So more difficulties in my life means what? More opportunity, more Ishvara, more opportunities to get to know Ishvara, more opportunities to surrender to Ishvara. Because I have to understand that this whole law of karma includes the karta, the doer, or the one who thinks I am the doer. And as long as I am trapped or feel trapped within the law of karma, I might as well make use of it. because all I have is my own doing, correct? So then good karma yields what? Good results. What is that called? Punya. Good karma yields punya. And what does punya do? It creates antibodies to ward off the papas from the past. It's like I can inoculate myself against the effects and the onslaughts of the slings and arrows of the aforementioned outrageous fortune. I can inoculate myself. How? I can wear a shield of punya. How do I wear a shield of punya? Where can I buy this shield? You don't buy it, you make it. Oh, I have to make it myself? I have to hammer some iron and make a vest? No. You have to have a kavacha. Kavacha means an armor of punya. How? By acting. Your action is all you have. So by acting in two ways, by always being consistently one with dharma, A, and by surrendering as an act of worship, as a conscious act of worship where I say, I am unable to help with this, you please help me. B. This is all, this is how I can use my action to falsify the actor, ultimately to prepare myself to falsify the actor. Right now all I have is my action. And yes, the action can cause me problems if it is away from Ishvara. But if it is an action that is designed to tap into the grace of that fountain of grace, which is Ishvara, then it becomes an act of worship. An act of worship has the power to inoculate myself, to inoculate me against the onslaught of previous karma in the form of fear, pain, sorrow and difficulties in my life, physical, mental, emotional. It is so beautiful. When you look at it deeply, there is nothing more than this. And so the worship and the prayer takes a very high place in my life. And don't listen to people who say, oh, you can't ask God for such a small thing like a promotion. And they will tell you all kinds of things, You should ask God for something big, something small, you shouldn't ask. It's like, you go to White House and Obama is there, you are with great difficulty granted 2 minutes with Obama. I want something. What? Mr. President, I want something. What? Can I have a pumpkin? This is what people will say. But really speaking, yes, that may sound ridiculous to go and ask such an important person for a pumpkin, which you can get yourself, correct? But asking Bhagavan, it's different. You know why? Because whatever you ask for is equal to a pumpkin from where Bhagavan is. Whatever you ask for is small. You may think it's big, but for Bhagavan everything is small. So whatever you ask for is a pumpkin. And then people will say, don't ask for a promotion. You tell them, you give me the promotion, then I won't ask. You give me the money, I won't ask. Don't ask Bhagavan for material things. This is another thing. Yeah. Where else are the material things going to come from? You are going to pray to some other entity for the material things and go to Bhagavan for spiritual things? Where is this distinction? I don't understand. For us, everything material is also spiritual. It's all Lakshmi. And who is Lakshmi with? Lakshmi Van is the name for Vishnu, the one who has Lakshmi with him. That is who you will pray to. Praying to Lakshmi is also praying to Bhagavan. So this is something very silly. And then there are certain other arguments. These are all arguments coming from when the skull starts to think instead of the brain cells. This is what happens. This is called Kapola Kalpitam. In Sanskrit there is an expression where the brain cells went to sleep, but the skull started to think. And then it had all these thoughts. On the third, argument against worship and prayer. What is the third argument? Bhagavan knows who you are. Bhagavan is almighty, all knowledge. And he knows, she knows what you are going through. So there is no need for you to ask. But you know what? Bhagavan's knowledge, is not stopping, is not a deterrent to you going through all these difficulties, correct? Yeah. Bhagavan's knowledge and Bhagavan's Shakti are like an underground spring. You can sit on top of the spring and go thirsty. Why? If you don't tap into it. That is where your karma is very powerful. You have to tap into that spring. This is what is called grace. It is not dispensed. It is tapped into. And it helps because there is a certain way in which you have a relationship with Bhagavan. And so every prayer becomes an act of surrender. And every result of that prayer is also accepted gracefully. Like I said last time, in some other class I said, sometimes people say my prayer is not answered. Every prayer is answered. Sometimes the answer is no, that's all. So we just have to see that. And there is a truth to that because sometimes, we say be careful what you wish for. Why? Because you may get it. Yeah. And then you may not want it. So you wish for it, you pray for it, and then you let it go. This is how the karma works. And so this bond between Ishvara and the Jiva is what results to the loosening of the bonds of Jivahood, which is what? A bondage. This is what leads to the loosening of the bondage. Because prayer by itself, just for its own sake, doesn't give anything except punya. And that's enough for some people. That's where they are at. Prayer by itself gives punya because it's an action. It's a good action. It's a good karma. Why is it good karma? Because when you are praying, you are not getting into mischief. The person who is praying is not robbing a bank or planning something against dharma. That's why it's a good karma. So then, it is by itself, prayer produces good karma. But what are you going to do with a good karma? If you don't do anything with a good karma, it becomes a golden shackle, again making you be born. We have a folk song. The woman who is the lady who went to collect, twigs, firewood. So she goes to the forest, she's picking firewood, and the Maina bird is chirping and warbling beautifully, singing beautiful notes. And the lady is inspired to sing a folk song. And what does she say? Come home with me, sweet bird. I will keep you in a golden cage. And I will, make a golden armor for your feet and for your beak so that your voice is immortalized. And everybody, and then she goes on. The second verse is I'll have lots of friends because your sweet singing at my door in this golden cage will bring lot of people to me because they will all be attracted to your singing, and I will have more friends, and my husband will love me more because your sweet singing will put everyone, my children will listen to me because everybody will be in a good mood. So please come, I'll keep you so beautifully. And the Maina says, keep your golden cage. In fact, you are already in it. Keep your golden beak. Keep your and she says in the third verse, I'll give you all these delicacies. He says, keep all this. For me, what I want most is what? My freedom. And it flies away. That is the story of this folk song. At the end of the song, the bird replies and flies away. And so like this, the good karma is like the golden cage, the golden beak, the golden spoon in the mouth, And what's the use? You're born as some big oil magnate in Saudi Arabia. What's the use? Or somewhere. Somewhere. You're born in Alaska. You're born somewhere else where there is, hardly a lot of desert, lot of harsh conditions, desert maybe, ice, and there is no connection to Bhagavan. What is the use of being born in these remote places? No use. You may have a lot of money, you may be the king of, some place in northern Europe, but what is the use? It doesn't take you out of what? Samsara. It doesn't take you out of samsara. Punya is not enough to take you out of samsara. Punya coupled with the pursuit of knowledge. That's why the word jnatva is used repeatedly in this Upanishad. Then punya becomes a preparation, an auxiliary preparation for the knowledge to sink in. Because punya removes all the obstacles to being connected to that knowledge. Yeah. So punya will ensure that you don't go away from the teaching. Punya will ensure that you don't go away from the teacher. Punya will ensure that no matter where you are, you will continue to, thrive and assimilate this knowledge. And all the obstacles that were going to come to stop you from the knowledge, what are these obstacles? Your own karma, are all just dissipated because you have gathered enough antibodies to stop that from happening. It is just so beautiful to see that, to understand that. So therefore, if you just pray and have punya through other means like charity and prayer, those are the main means of gaining punya. So you give lots of money and time for charity and you do lots of prayer. Then what will happen? Without the knowledge, nothing will happen. That's all. We'll have a good life, this life and next life. That's all. Ajnana won't go. So in other words, having only punya is like getting dressed up, nicely. Wearing an ornate and elaborate dress, lot of jewelry and cufflinks and all these things the person has. Shimmering. Oh, so you're going out, the person is wearing a tuxedo. You're going out? No. Oh, there is some kind of a party at home? No. So you're just having a intimate family time, you and your family, you're celebrating something? No. So what are you going to do? I'm just going to take all this off and go to bed. Yeah. So punya is an adornment for the one who is a pursuant of knowledge. Yeah. Otherwise, it is of no use. It's of no use at all. So it's an auxiliary help. The devotion, the bhakti is what is more important. It's not that one is trying to become a punya scrounger. One is getting into the worship for the sake of developing devotion to what? Through where the object of devotion is to be discovered as none other than the subject. That is where the bhakti comes in. Without bhakti, without Ishvara, without punya, there is no Vedanta. Really. This is, as plainly as to be said. So any allergies with regard to Ishvara, one has to overcome. Guru allergy, Ishvara allergy, one has to overcome. And one has to have a practice of having a small home altar in front of which one sits even for 2 minutes a day. Light a small lamp. Have a small little thing. Doesn't matter what you do. Just sit there. Even if you don't want to light a lamp, sit there. But have a corner. You don't even have to have a room. In India people have elaborate one whole bedroom they make into a, puja room. Yeah. Even the guests and even they will be sitting in the living room, but there will be a separate room for Bhagavan. It's like a home temple. Everybody has that. In Thailand, they have like this spirit house. They have these beautiful houses. They keep small little ornate houses right in front. They keep, places for worship. And of course, Bhagavan is everywhere. But because of that, we have the power in this culture to be able to invoke that Bhagavan strongly in one place in a particular form. In any form that you like, that is why it is called Ishta Devata. And that form alone becomes a CD. What is CD? A ladder to attaining and understanding yourself as the formless. Yeah. It is through forms you see yourself as formless. You see the whole Bhagavan as formless. That formless is invoked through forms only. Even in religions where they say Bhagavan is formless and we don't want all these forms. They have forms. In the Christian religion, they have forms. Even in Islamic religion, they have forms. You have to face a certain way. All the hotels will say this is where the direction you have to face, it is west. That is where Mecca is. Why west? Because there is a special connection to that tradition. And people who go to Hajj, they kiss a stone and they do all that. This is all forms. And so we cannot be allergic to forms. And so therefore, we have to relate to this form where we invoke the cause of everything. including this body, mind, sense complex. So as a devotee, that helplessness goes away, because in the wake of that relative oneness because that devotion gives that oneness, it gives a relative oneness, it eradicates the differences between the devotee and the object of devotion. That is why when you sing, when you pray, there is that oneness. And that oneness alone, gives way to understanding that the differences are mithya. So coupled with this teaching, this is what happens. And so therefore, muchyate sarva pashaihi, all kinds of bondages. How many bondages are there? Wide the Mundakopanishad. Vidyate hridaya grandhihi, chidyante sarva samshayaha, kshiyante cha asya karmani, tasmin drishte paravare. The heart knot is torn asunder. Because, a knotty heart, full of all kinds of lumps and clumps of emotions and feelings and all kinds of old, what's that? Old pains and sorrows, right? A knotty heart. The heart knot is torn asunder. All doubts are totally cleared. All karmas come crashing down to the one who knows that oneself as nothing but the absolute. To the one who knows that the inferior and the superior are just figments of the imagination. There is nothing called exalted, nothing called inferior. To the one who knows. This is what it says. So sarva pashaihi here means the chains, all kinds of pasha means chain, bondage. So what are the links in this bondage? The first link is ignorance. Because of this ignorance, I feel separate, correct? And the second link is what? Because of this separation, what happens? I have desires. Avidya, first link. Kama, second link. Kama means what? All kinds of desires to be one with something and to be whole and to want this and want that and want an experience of oneness, all this. Avidya, kama, and because of kama, what do? I do things, karma. I do things to achieve those desires. So avidya, kama, karma, shrinkhala. The bondage of kama, karma, starting with avidya. So ignorance, desires, and action and results of actions. This is the loops, the chains of bondage. And this, when you understand, whatever you do, it's for fun. There is no compulsion to do. More we shall see next week. Purnamadaഃ Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamādāya Purnamevāvashyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Any questions? No? Thank you.